Hey guys, welcome back to Gen Z Coders. This is the last tutorial for Scratch because I think if you've seen the other videos, then we've pretty much covered most of the fundamentals and all the basic elements. So after watching this last tutorial, I suppose you can just experiment and create your own programs. This time we'll be making a very simple game, but it will involve all of the categories of the blocks except sound and my blocks. So I'm going to start off by explaining to you what the game is, and then what I want you to do is pause the video and try to think about it yourself, right? So think about how it's going to work, think about the blocks you may want to use, and how the code is going to look like. You might even want to try to start to make the program yourself before continuing the video. Okay, so here it is. Right now, on my screen, you may have noticed that I have Scratchy, a ball, which is set to 50% of its size, and also a balloon that is set to 60% of its original size. So at the moment, forget about the positions, but essentially what the game is going to be is that the balloon is going to be constantly or forever moving around to random positions. And then the ball will be released from Scratchy when your spacebar is pressed. So it'll basically also follow Scratchy around wherever he goes. Now, if the ball touches the balloon when it's released, then the player gets 1 point. Now, I think what's really important to remember over here is that the ball must follow Scratchy, right? And essentially, what the aim is that you want the ball to touch the balloon. It's kind of like the ball should hit the balloon, right? So besides the Scratchy should also be able to move from the left to the right and vice versa, but he should not be able to move up or down because it's almost like the player in the game, right? You usually don't let the player go too close to the balloon. Okay, so we're going to be starting by coding Scratchy. So we're going to go to the events, and then obviously we're going to jack this block first. So just a reminder that this block tells the computer that when the game is started by pressing the green flag, then it basically tells them to do the following code. So now we want Scratchy to move basically like right and left, and this should happen when the right and left arrows are pressed. So when the keys are pressed on the keyboard. So if right, then it would be like to the right, of course, and then to the left, like the opposite direction. Yeah? So that's basically what's going to happen. And now what we're going to do is we're going to put the forever loop because we want Scratchy to be able to move to the left and right all the time, not just once. So inside we're going to be putting the if loop so that we can put the key pressed code as a clause or input and the glide to position as an outcome or output. So if the right arrow is clicked, then do this, but if the left arrow is clicked, then do that. So I'm just going to add the clauses quickly. Right, so now as I mentioned, what we want to happen is that if the right or left arrows are clicked, is for so Scratchy should be able to move either to either side. So, or in other terms, we want him to change his position by a certain amount. Now we put the glide 1 second to X and Y as the output, right? So let's just go ahead and do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to be changing the 1 to 0.15 because I really don't want it to take too long. I don't want the gliding to take too long. Okay, so now you might be wondering that if we just want Scratchy to change his X position, then why don't we just use the change X code, right? Well, the reason behind this is that gliding just makes it a lot smoother, while just changing the position would make it very abrupt. So in games we usually use glide because it looks better and even smoother. Right, so now if I want to change Scratchy's X position, since I've selected the glide block, what I have to do is, where it says the X coordinate, I have to put an operator and say X coordinate plus 20 or minus 20 for moving to the left. So it's like moving 20 X coordinates or adding or subtracting 20 X coordinates from the current X coordinate. Right, I've already put in the Y coordinate bubble. The Y coordinate block is like constant because that ensures that when the arrows are clicked, Scratchy doesn't really move up or down. Like I've already mentioned, we don't want him to move up or down. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. So now let's test it. So I'm moving it, and well, it works, right? And if there's any problem at this point, what you want to do is go over your code, rewind the video, and if you still have an issue, don't hesitate to leave a comment, right? Okay, so now there is one problem over here. Notice how Scratchy goes out of the frame. So this shouldn't be happening. Let's change that. So to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to find his maximum and his minimum X positions. So his minimum X position is the extreme position to the left, which I'm going to take as negative 183. You can test that out and look at what his extreme position is, well, what you want it to be, right? And so to do this, I'm just going to get the code operators, and then I'm going to choose, and then I'm going to find the maximum position, which is to the extreme right as well, and then I'm going to put that in the operator as well. So the reason I've actually chosen these inequalities is so that I can put them as clauses in the if loop. So I can say that if the key is pressed and the X position is greater than negative 183, only then should he glide to the left. However, if it is smaller than or equal to than this coordinate, then do not move. The same applies for the other maximum position, which is to the right. Now, I'm going to add the AND operator as well, because like obviously we have two clauses now, but so I'll just finish this off and then I'm gonna demonstrate for you. So I think we can run it now. Let's take a look. Alright, good. So it worked, but I still think we can maybe change the minimum and maximum positions. So maybe like negative, I'd say 176, and for the other one maybe like 184, right? And so actually this is, if you see, this is actually trial and error. So you just have to experiment a bit, right? So if you see now that works, and now what we just want to do is we want to set a starting position for Scratchy. And then actually for this we can just put it the same as his current position, right? So that's okay. Cool, so now that we're done with that, I think we can go ahead and code the ball. So this sprite was actually going to follow Scratchy wherever Scratchy goes. This means that if Scratchy is, let's say, at, let's say if he's at this position, then the ball should be there too. And if Scratchy is at another position, then the ball should be there too. So add the when green flag clicked code block again. So the first thing we want is we want the ball to hide, because you know that it should only show when it's released, right? Because we want the ball to follow him, but we don't really we don't want it to like come on top of him and almost hide part of Scratchy, if you get what I mean. So after this, now what we're going to do is we're going to add a motion code block, and so add the following block, and then change it to sprite 1. So this essentially means that when the flag is clicked, if Scratchy goes here, then the ball follows him over there as well. So the ball follows him wherever. It's hidden right now so we can't see it, but it is there. Maybe you could temporarily remove the hide option and look at it to confirm that it's there. So next what you want to do is you want the ball to be released. but we need something to trigger that. So I'm going to add an event block, so that this event block is going to be the when the space bar is clicked, because that's what's going to trigger it. So this tells the program that when the player presses the space key, release the ball. So now remember the code we used previously. We didn't really give it specific values, right? So like you can look at this again. We didn't really give it specific values. Instead, we used more like an operation and like a range. So we're going to do something similar over here. Here we don't want its X position to change because it's moving left or right with Scratchy. And so since we've already allowed Scratchy and we've already coded Scratchy to change its X position, the ball doesn't need to do it. So we keep it the same for the ball, but the Y position is one that changes. So what you need to do now is you need to just add the following code, right? So the one that I'm adding at the moment. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one of the operators, as you can see, and I'm going to put the value as 150 because what I want is I want the ball to jump like pretty high, considering that the balloon can also go that high, right? So of course then after that what we need to do is we need to add the show option because we want it to be seen now after it's been released. Right, so we can try it out now. Okay, now you may have noticed the ball goes up from and to the same X position. So instead of following Scratchy and then jumping from Scratchy's spot, it just goes from the same spot, right? Now, this is because we haven't put the forever loop for the following bit, like the following bit of code, so that part. And basically, so now we can run it and just like watch because um, if you look at it, see, now it goes from exactly where Scratchy is standing. So the problem we have here now is that we've put in the forever loop, we've put this, like that part in the forever loop, which was kind of an issue. So these sorts of things you just kind of have to figure out as you try to debug it. So I'm also going to change that 0.2 to 0.4 seconds because I think the ball is just going up a bit too fast. And here also, where I've written 150, I think I'm going to be changing that to maybe 200 because, I mean, you want it to go a bit higher, right? And at least as high as the string of the balloon. Alright, so this is the code for the ball. We may have to come back and edit it later, but now let's move on to the balloon. Now here I think I mentioned this in one of the previous videos that there's not much difference between the go-to and the glide code blocks. The only thing is that the glide is a bit smoother, which is more beneficial at the moment. So we don't want to put in specific digits again, right? So we're just going to be putting the random thing. Now, basically, again, what you may have noticed is that there's already a glide to random position option again, but we don't want this either. This is because we need to give the balloon a certain limit. For example, it shouldn't go below Scratchy or it shouldn't go too far up. So we add this glide code instead, and with that, we use the operators to set certain limits. So we look at the balloon's maximum and minimum positions for like the x and y coordinates. So this time the balloon will be moving both its x and y coordinates, right? And I'm just going to be changing that so where it says your minimum and maximum over there, it says select random from 1 to 10, but I'm going to be setting the balloon's minimum and maximum values. And to do this, I'll be looking at both the extreme corners, so the top right corner and the bottom left, as I'm doing right now. This way I get both extremes for the x and y coordinates. Yeah, so now that we have that, we can go ahead and try it out. Yeah, so alright, it works well, but the only thing is we may not want to keep it at like maybe 1 second because it might be a bit, I don't know, too fast. So we should try to slow down the balloon's pace a bit, and we can keep it to like maybe 2 seconds for now. Yeah, that's much better. So next what we're going to do is we are going to be creating a variable. So the variable is going to be for the score. So go to Scratchy and then do the following, right? So click on make a variable. Okay, so now here you may see that um, it says either for all sprites or for this sprite only. So this essentially means that do you want the information that you're going to store to be applicable only for one sprite, so only for Scratchy, or for all sprites? So if it were a name, obviously you'd say for the sprite only, but if it was the age of all the students in the class, it would be for all sprites. So in this situation, of course, the score is only applicable to Scratchy, but since we only have one player, it doesn't really matter. So I chose for alt sprites this time. Alright, so what I've gone and done is I've already added an if statement now with the touching mouse pointer, which I've changed to balloon instead, as the clause. So then what I've said is change the score by 1. So this basically means that if the ball touches the balloon, then change the score by 1. And at the top, I've also added a code that says set score to 0. Basically what this means is that each time you restart the game, bring the score back to 0. So actually, that's it. The game is now complete. So you could definitely add some more levels and make it more complicated by adding something like, let's say, if the score is 5, then glide for 1.5 seconds instead of 2, as we've already said. And you can go on and on with that. You can go and develop this game much, much further. However, I'm going to leave you guys at this because I think we've covered the fundamentals of Scratch, and I really think you guys may have learned quite a bit through this. So I hope you've enjoyed learning this, and I really hope that you continue to make new games. If you do, please do share the links to them in the comments below. I'd love to play them out. Thank you for watching. Bye!